Hi everybody, Matt Bull, MD of Action Coach in Loughborough, here with another episode of the Business Spotlight. And we're very lucky today to be joined by Chris Barker from Spirit Health. How are you, Chris?
I'm really good, thanks, Matt, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Let's get started then. Just tell everybody a little bit about your role at Spirit and what Spirit does.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I'm Chief Executive, is my official job title. I prefer the subtitle one, which is Chief Mischievist. What's my role? My role is, I guess if I give a formal version and informal, my formal one is to create an environment for people to succeed in delivering our mission. And our mission is to go make healthcare affordable, accessible and easy for everyone around the world. My informal job title enables me to ask the really difficult questions that people are kind of half hoping that I don't ask, with a bit of mischief involved, but mainly with the purpose of pushing people a little bit harder, faster, and trying to get a bit more out of them.
Excellent, excellent. So lots we could go out there, but I'll just take us back to the beginning first then. So how did you become involved with Spirit? How did Spirit come about?
My personal background was working for large pharmaceutical companies, which gave me a great grounding in healthcare and understanding the wants and needs of the market and populations. And I went on to found Spirit about 15 years ago now, really with a mission to, at the time in the UK, make healthcare more affordable and more accessible. So we started out really with the sorts of things that we used to do within larger pharmaceutical companies, so looking at medical devices and how we can make them more affordable for the NHS. So that's where we started, and these days that division saves the NHS millions of pounds each year on prescribing costs in primary care.
Amazing. A lot of people watching this may have an idea of a business maybe that they want to run. And a lot of people will see opportunities in the marketplace or see areas they think actually I could do that differently. But as we know, most people don't end up taking that first step. What was it 15 years ago that made you go, actually, there really is something here that I want to go after?
Serendipity, I think, Matt, is the most honest answer to that question. So I didn't really set out to go and build the company that we now have. I set out to go and be essentially a healthcare management consultant. I was just terrible at it, and I didn't enjoy it. So I went out and I got some very good contracts working with the NHS and redesigning health services, so really worthwhile things. But what I learned about myself at the time was that I liked working with people and building teams, and I learned I was rubbish at loads of stuff. And actually, I needed to work with teams to help make up for those shortfalls and where I didn't have strengths. And whilst I tried to do that as a consultant, I simply wasn't able to do it. So I guess the popular word is to pivot. I'm not sure I thought of it like that at the time, but I decided to do something a bit different, which was to try and build a team. And it was far easier to build that team with a product-led and service-led business than it was as a consultant.
Okay. And how was that transition for you then from sort of, as a consultant working for for yourself in charge of you, to then building these teams? Was that a natural transition for you, or were there challenges along the way there?
That's a good question. So, people are really challenging. Yeah. And I include myself in the people category, although my wife occasionally refers to me as a robot rather than a person. But working out what motivates and inspires and incentivizes people and engaging with that, I think is something that I've had to work with and learn over not weeks and months, but years. And I'm still on a journey to go and learn. So it was massively different, being responsible for yourself to being accountable and responsible for a larger group of people. And I'm not a very good first line manager. So at supporting people with things that they're new at, I'm not particularly strong. I'm much better at working with more established leaders and second line management. So for me, it was important to quickly get people in that were good at that first line management work, to enable me to work with a team of people who were perhaps more tolerant of my less detailed way of working.
Interesting. What have you learned about yourself over the course of, 15 years is a decent amount of time, constantly growing, I imagine, as the business grows. What have you learned about yourself over that time?
Yes, so business-wise, yes, we've been growing both in terms of turnover and people. And I guess in relation to that people bit, I think the more people I work with and collaborate with, the more I realize I'm really crap at. So even the things that I once upon a time thought I was brilliant at, we now have people in our organisation that are far better at it than I am. I think I'm quite lucky that actually that doesn't bother me. If anything, it excites me. We hear people talk about imposter syndrome and worrying about your job, and I don't really get that personally, because I kind of just see it as an exciting journey that I can get people that can do. Somehow I can persuade people that can do things immeasurably better than I can to come and work with me and join me on that journey, and that for me is really good fun.
Brilliant. It's interesting. A lot of people watching this will be intrigued about your alternative job title, should we say, which clearly, I suppose, I'd imagine is a reflection of your character, but also that therefore must transmit into the culture of the organization. How has the culture evolved over the years?
Another good question. So we've culture is something that we try and work with and curate on an ongoing basis. So where we would describe ourselves as quite a culture-driven company, and we often win awards for our company culture and how we work, which is nice to be recognised. For us, it's always been as important about how we do things as what we actually do. And I guess in some ways we're lucky that we also work in healthcare, which makes it draws people in already. From a spirit perspective, we would describe ourselves by some values, but then behind those values are a series of behaviours and expectations of people to be in keeping with those values. And at a very high level, those values are about being brilliant, but also being vulnerable. So being able to say what you're amazing at, but also and identify your strengths, because we're a strengths-based organisation, but also to talk about where you're not very good and where you need to get other people to come in and deliver things better and faster than you could. We talk about wanting people to have vigor and enthusiasm, but also link that to resilience. And we expect you to be brilliant, work really hard, fail quickly, and then get up and start again as fast as you possibly can. So those are tough. And then lastly, we talk about family. Probably the most misunderstood of our values, really, because it's twofold. One, it's that supportive and the metaphorical arm around someone's shoulders when they need help, but it's also the metaphorical kick up the bum when they're not doing something. It's the accountability that you'd expect when you're talking to not just colleagues and work associates, but your work family. So for us, engaging and driving that is really important. And as we bring people into the business, and a key part of my job is bringing in senior leaders, it's as important that they engage with that culture and want to invigorate that and excel within it as it is that they've got the prerequisite skills to deliver on a job as well.
Amazing. The health sector is a fast-moving sector. Clearly, there's been a lot, I imagine, in the last 2 to 3 years with COVID and things like that. How do you, as a leader, ensure that you deal with the short term and what you see as a fast-moving environment, while also maintaining your sight on the longer term, which as a leader is a key part of the role?
So I'm really lucky that with the stage that we've got to, I kind of describe myself as a bit of a talking figurehead. So if there's real work to be done inside Spirit these days, I'm not the one that's doing it. So we have leadership teams who look at that short to medium term horizon, and then that gives a smaller group of us the opportunity to look at that horizon scanning and partnerships and exploring opportunities. I'm also a bit of a magpie, so I love opportunities and the potential that the future offers. Most of my senior leaders will be calming me down and telling me that we're not doing things, and we're going to keep focused on the core parts of our business that are driving that growth and that making a difference. So for me, having different people who have proportions of their time that are focused on the core business, and then allowing relatively small percentages, 20%, for example, to explore future potential seems to be a healthy balance. But to be honest, once I find something that works, we tend to find that it doesn't next year, and we tend to tinker a little bit more with it as well. So that's how it is for now.
Amazing. So one of the key questions that I always ask people at the end of these interviews, Chris, is that I'm personally not one for regrets. I believe in lessons learned along the way. I always ask people, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I'm glad that I got a slight pre-warn that you're going to ask that question, because I had to reflect quite hard on what that might be. Do what you enjoy would be my advice, and enjoy the journey. And I think if I was to reflect on myself, and I do, I think sometimes I've been so focused on an end goal, on a target, on an objective, whatever it is, that quarter, that year, that 3-year cycle, that sometimes I forget to enjoy the brilliant stuff that's happening now. And actually, I luckily fell into something that I really enjoy. I didn't go and strategically pick out something that I was going to massively love. So my advice to my 18-year-old self would be, just make sure that you pick something that you're really going to enjoy doing. And if that's been an administrator, fine, great, brilliant, be the best administrator you can. And then make sure you enjoy the journey.
Amazing. Chris, absolute pleasure having you on this episode of The Spotlight. We wish you all the success moving forward, and thank you for sharing your lessons and wisdom with our viewers today. Many thanks.
Thanks, Matt.